Good, let's get started. I would like to use today's lesson to recap, to show you a sample solution for the exam that we did today. But it would be boring to just... Can I have your attention, please? It would be boring to just repeat exactly the same code that you have maybe written in the exam today. So I would like to take the opportunity to add a little bit of unit testing to this exam. So we will try to solve this problem together, and I would like to show you the value of doing automated unit tests while we are solving such a problem. So we have unit testing in our curriculum for this year, but don't worry, the things that I show you today are not yet part of any exam that is coming next week or in the next few weeks. We will dive deeper into unit testing. But I thought it would be a good idea to maybe get used to this feeling how we do test-driven development, how that feels like, and the exam example is a good chance for that. Please note that I have already checked in the exam that you did together. It's in this folder, and of course I'm recording this lesson today, so I will put it on YouTube again. So if you want to recap later on in this year when we do some unit testing, what I show you today, you can do that, okay? So in this folder, you already have the currency converter. Good, and with that, let's get started. If you want to follow along, you can, but we will just implement the currency converter. So you can also take your example from the exam today in the morning and add the unit tests if you want, but you can also code with me together. So let's take a look at the exam here. The exam specification, we have to write a command line tool that reads a little bit of CSV and does some exchange rate conversion. That's the idea here. So the first thing that we have to fulfill, we can see it here, we have to create a class library using .NET Standard 2.1. What I have seen, everybody mastered this one. So I will just quickly set up the project here in Visual Studio. So let's create a new console app. We have done that multiple times. This is the currency conversion sample in this folder. Let's call it currency conversion, and let's call it currency conversion. That's it for the command line. Good. Visual Studio will quickly set up the project. Here it is. And we add a .NET Standard class library. As I said, I think all of you mastered that one. Select the class library, so I will quickly go through it. Currency converter dot, let's call it logic. Good. Here we have the logic. Please don't forget that Visual Studio 2019 will by default create a .NET Standard 2.0 library. You see it here? I requested a 2.1 library, so please change that. Don't worry, if you miss that step, it's only a slight reduction of your points, not a lot. Next one, we need a dependency. Here is the logic. So this project needs to depend on this one. So add dependencies, add a reference to the other project. Fine, done that. Next, we need to have our test data. Let me quickly open up the folder where we live in, and you see I already provided the test data for you. This is the CSV files that you had to parse in that case. So let's take these two CSV files, and the simplest solution is take it and drag and drop it, for instance here in the currency conversion project. I would not put the CSV files in the class library. Why? I told you in the class library I don't want to see file IO. So therefore it would be a good idea to put it in the command line tool. Don't forget, right click, properties, copy to output directory, always or if newer. Same for the second CSV. Just a quick repetition. If we do that, and if we build our app, then we can take a look in the folder explorer in our bin debug netcorrupt3, and you see our exe side by side to our CSVs. So now we can open the CSV files just with a relative path. From what I have seen when walking through the rows during the exam, most of you managed to do that one. Yeah? Good. So let's quickly read in these CSV files. Just a quick repetition. We can say file dot read all text async. Give it the file name. Exchange rates CSV. Okay, because this is an async method, we have to await it. Can you remember the cooking recipe for using await? The method must be async, exactly, and it has to return task. Good. If you created your own method for that, all that is fine. Var rates. And let's do the same for our prices. Good? So until here, there shouldn't have been big problems. I think all of you got that. So as far as I can see, or nearly all, I'm not sure if all of you, but as far as I've seen, nobody really struggled with that one. I think we had one interesting solution with the reading of line by line. That's perfectly fine too. That's okay. Good. Absolutely, it works. It works. So now we have to parse this CSV into an appropriate in-memory data structure. So let's start with the exchange rates. Let's look at the CSV files. What data structure did you select to store these records in? Any suggestions?
Dictionary.
A dictionary of string and decimal. We can do that. I will follow your suggestion. So we will put the exchange rate into a dictionary of string and decimal. So rates dict, for instance. Okay, we need a using here. Good, I agree.
I have a question.
Yeah, question.
How exactly does a dictionary work?
A dictionary has exactly one entry per key. This is the key. String is the key.
So it's similar to a map?
It's similar to a map. Yes, in other programming languages, a dictionary is called a map.
Oh.
Exactly. Yes. Similar to a JavaScript object. It's also a dictionary of string. You don't absolutely need to use a dictionary if you prefer to create your own class with a property called currency and a property called rate. That's perfectly fine too. But I just followed your suggestion, so let's do a dictionary of string and decimal. Well, the second one, the prices, what did you do here? Probably a class, right? Did you create a class? Anybody used a different data structure? Yes?
I used the list with objects.
Yeah, again, but for the objects you created a class, right?
Yes.
Exactly, good. So let's create the class. Where do we put the class? Well, of course, we put it into our logic project. Right-click logic project, add class. How can we call it? Let's call it product, because it contains product data or the product price. Don't forget, some of you made that mistake again, make the class public in the class library, otherwise you cannot access it from outside. Small tip, maybe you can remember it, prop, top, and you get auto-completion for the properties. So, exchange rates, prices, we have description, currency, and price. Good. So, string, description, prop, string, currency, and prop, decimal, price. Please remember the C# data type decimal. Decimal is good for monetary values. So if you need commas, but you don't want you don't want the behavior of a float number, which sometimes acts really strangely. You know that from JavaScript. But decimal numbers are perfectly suited for monetary values, for Geldbeträge. Good. So we can now, you suggested a list, I agree, list of product price. Good. I like that one. Nice. So we now need to read the CSV files, and we should implement those parts of the CSV parsing logic that is common for both CSV files only once. Good. Now let's think of what we have to do when we parse a CSV file. To be honest, I really do that when I create a more complex algorithm, maybe not for something as simple as that, but when you are new to this stuff, simplicity is always relative. So I really sit down and I think about what do I have to do in order to parse this file. Can we try to find a kind of checklist? So what is the first thing that we have to do in order to parse such a CSV file? Yep.
Get each individual line.
Exactly. Split text into lines. And here we are going to use \n, and we have learned, if you read the specification closely, that in our case it might happen that we have caret return line feed. So what else can we do? We can say we remove \r in each line. Good. What else do we have to do? Yeah?
Split it up by a comma.
Split each line into columns with the comma. Good. And the result has then be turned into the proper target. So then we have to convert the columns into proper final type. That means either a dictionary, either a single line in a dictionary is called, you see it here, key value is called a key value pair. If you created a class, it should be your class. And the product price. Nice. I've seen that some of you had a piece of paper lying in front of them and maybe sketching the ideas and the steps to go through until you find the algorithm. That's perfectly right. I've done it here as a comment in my code just to make up my mind and to think about what do I have to do. This will be now my checklist. Good. So we shouldn't implement these two things or these three things 2 times because they are exactly the same independent of whether we read prices or exchange rates. Good. So let's put that one in a separate function. I would suggest that we create a separate class for parsing the CSV files, right? Maybe we call it the CSV parser. Let's call the method public. We don't know the result type yet. Parse. And it gets string text. Good. What do we have to do first? Split the text into lines. Did anybody find out how we do that? Well, a lot of you found it out.
Text.replace.
Okay. You do the replace first. I agree. And you replace
\r
with
with
nothing.
string.empty.
String.empty, even better. Good. This is this line here, okay? So let's check that one. That's checked. Next one, split the result into multiple lines. How do we do that? Well, it's very difficult. It's already on the screen. The method is called split. Good. Now we have done that. Check. Let's save that in a variable. var lines. The next thing that we have to do is we have to split each line into columns. And now I'm interested, I'm curious, how did you do that?
Also with the split method.
Yeah, but you have to do it in a kind of loop, because if we take a look at the checklist, it says each line,
Oh,
right?
well, I did it line by line there, really, so I did
You did it line by line, good. But if you don't do it line by line, what can you do, yeah? For each loop, yes, we can do a for each loop, and I will do it now in 2 steps. If you follow along and you would like to write the code into your Visual Studio, don't type with me now, okay? We will change that code in a second. For each var line in lines, and we can do a split exactly like you suggested. So we say line.split with a comma, right? Good? Okay, like that? What do we do with the result? Var columns. What should I do with the result? Uh-huh.
it should be parsed into our data structure. But
Really? But this is common for both CSV files. I want to make that independent of whether we parse the prices or the exchange rates. So I wouldn't immediately convert it into the target data structure. Yes, you have an idea?
If check the array length, if it's 2, then it's exchange rate, and if the length is 3, then it's price.
You could do that. Yes, you could do that, but I would like to keep this method parse completely independent. Uh-huh.
We could use predicates. So we pass a function which converts the columns to an object.
Oh my god, that's so complicated. You know what I would do? I would just say this parse method does nothing else than returning an list of string arrays. List means 1 entry per line, and string array means 1 entry per column. So we get a list of columns. You get the idea? Now all I can do, please note what I do now, is I say var results equals new list of string array, something like this. And then I can just say result.add this guy, and maybe do a to array here. Array, I mistyped, it's a long day already. And then I don't need these columns here. Get the idea? Well, need a link. And then we can do what? Return result, correct? Now, luckily, we don't need to write that. Do you have an idea? We could do a very good idea, very good idea. Just so that we recap that, please take a look what we do here. We can say I enumerable of string array. If we don't do list, I enumerable, then take a look what I can do now. No result, yield, return. Have we talked about yield already? Yes? Okay, so that is a good idea, would be a good solution. Absolutely, but we can make it even cooler, a little bit. We can do that in a single line. All of these solutions are okay. It's also okay to do the if with the columns and check the array length, that's also fine. But in my case, let me show you what I do. In that case, I'm just saying select line, and I do the splitting of the line here. See that one? And then I can immediately return this guy. And I don't need anything else. See that one? And if we are really cool, We can do it something like this, and then we can even get rid of this guy here. See what I mean? We can discuss whether it's the fastest version, but it is definitely a good idea. This one is list of lines, this one is list of columns, and this is the content of each column. You would like to comment?
Shouldn't the return type be the most specific?
The most specific that we can guarantee. And in my case, I don't want to guarantee anything because the original data type that we operate on is IEnumerable. Yeah. So you can write it like that. You can even make it shorter. You can remove the curly braces and remove the return statement if you like. Then we really have a single line of code. That is possible. If you didn't come up with that solution, that's perfectly fine. But when doing a recap, I always like to recap some more advanced stuff. But I think you got the idea, right? Good. Now we have a parse method. And now I would like to show you what it means to do development together with automated testing. Because now, without me having the whole application implemented, I would immediately like to know whether my parse function works. I could now, and please listen closely, this is now important. I could now go to program and write a bunch of console write line statements and try the parser. But I would not recommend that. On the contrary, now I will do something different. I will add a unit testing project. Add new project and ask for a test project. In my case, I'm going to use xUnit because I really like xUnit. It's very widely used, it's open source, it works nice. So let's take xUnit. This is the part that is new, okay? Currency converter dot tests. Oops, I did a typo. I have to fix that one. Lowercase e. Let me fix the typo. I'm sorry that I typed that wrong. Oh, it fixed it automatically. I'm really glad. Now, we would like to add a parse test. Let's open the parse algorithm here, side by side to my test code. In my real workstation, I have multiple monitors. My typical setup is one large monitor directly in front of me, one large monitor to my left side, my laptop to my right side. That is my typical work setup, and I really like that. So then I would put one piece of code on one monitor and the other piece of code on the other monitor. Here I have to split the monitors. Good. Let's rename this test. And let's say this is a parse CSV. Let's call it like this. Do we have a break? I don't think so, right? Okay, so we can continue. Let me show you how you do this test. First, we prepare, then we execute, and last, we check, we assert. Let's do the prepare. Var parser p is a new CSV parser. Let's add the appropriate using. Come on. Good. Let's execute. Var result equals to parser.parse. And now it wants to have a text. So I specify a test text directly here. That's a good idea. So what I can do, I can use the something like this. This is a special string. Do you know what this @ character means? It can be a multi-line string. That's the @ character. So what I can do is I can say call 1, call 2. I could write it like that. Test 1, test 2. That would be test data. But I can even make it shorter or much more elegant. I can say I would like to make a test where I write it in one line. You get the idea? And at the end, I check whether my result is okay. So the first thing that I can check with assert, it looks like this, equal, I can check whether we have 3 lines. 3, I expect result dot count to be 3, because we must have 3 lines. Do you get the idea? Link is missing. The next thing that we can check is whether our line, let's take the first line, contains how many columns in our case?
2.
Exactly. So we can say count 2. Maybe write a comment here. We expect 3 lines. We expect, oh, I can show you something more interesting. Here we can add I'm looking for a, no, I'm fine with that. Lines, columns. Do you understand the principle of this test? This allows me to try something. Now, please note that we got this nice little icon here. This is available because it's a test. I can click on it and immediately run it. It will show me the test explorer here on the left-hand side, and it will try my code and see whether it works. Will you please run my code? Please run it. And nice, it's check. See that one? If we do something wrong, something like this for instance, and we run it again, it has to be red. This is something that I typically do. When I write the test, I first write the test in a way that it breaks. I want to see that it breaks, that it really checks something, that it would recognize a mistake. And then I fix it. I cannot count the number of times where I have written a test, I made a mistake in my test, and the test actually checked nothing. It didn't find the bugs that I wanted to find. So therefore, I got used to the fact that I always try my tests failing first and then fixing the tests to see that they really pass. Get the idea so far? Good. Now this could be any ideas for further tests? What we can test additionally? See that one? Do we test carriage return line feed? Yes, we do. We can always ignore the first line. Do we do that already? No. Do we ignore empty lines? No. So what I would now do is I would change my tests so that I have tests that check all acceptance criteria. This is called an acceptance criteria. Is it okay for the customer to give me this data? If your software cannot handle the acceptance criteria, you will not get paid. Therefore, we have to check whether we fulfill all acceptance criteria. So what I would do now is I will take this fact, copy it, don't worry. I will fix that later, that we copy it here. Parse CSV with empty lines. So let's check what's going to happen if we add some additional lines. Do you get the idea? Now I'm running the test. Do you think it will succeed? Well, obviously not, because we haven't written the code yet. But the point is, we now see that it fails. You see it? This is called test-driven development. I'm writing the tests first, and then I'm going to fix the code. Let's fix the code together. So let's go to where is the parser? Here is the parser. What do I have to change in order to filter empty lines? I have to add another method. Guess. Where? Exactly. Where? Line string dot is null or empty line not. You get the idea? Filter all lines where the line is not empty. Got it? Good. Let's run the test. Test is preparing, test is executing, green check, good. Do you now see the value of this unit test? It really is a lot of fun. So, well, fun. Kind of. Now let's check the code that we have written here. Please compare this method with this method. Where is the difference? Here, right? Everything else is identical, correct? What did I tell you? What is a very important rule in software development? Don't repeat yourself. How can we somehow make these two very similar tests just one test? This works like that. If you want to follow along, you can, but you can also just check it on the video beamer, because we will write a lot of tests until the end of this school year. It's just a glimpse into the future. Instead of a fact, we now create a theory. For this theory, we can add inline data, and we can move the test data from inside of the test into our inline data. And then we let us give the text as an input parameter. String. So that means this one is now injected into the text of our test method. Get the idea? And now I can just say parse the text. Get it? And if I want to have the second test, well, no problem. I just add another inline data, copy this text, and we're done. And we can remove the second test. Get it? Now my test is running twice, exactly the same test algorithm with different test data. That's very common. You see that very frequently, and it's super useful. Let's give it a try. Run the test. We now should see two tests here. Yes, looks good. And got it. Two green checks. Let's check it again. Do we check character return line feed? Yes. Do we check empty lines? Yes. Do we ignore the first line yet? No. How would our test change if we would correctly ignore the first line? Who can tell me? What do I have to change if we ignore the first line? Just one line of code. Uh-huh.
We would only have two lines.
Exactly. This one. And again, test-driven development. We first want to see the test failing, so we run the test, we see the red X in a second, build succeeded, it's now running. Failed. See that one? And now we go to the parser. What do I have to change in order to ignore the first row? Well, this one is a little bit difficult. You might guess it or not. Does anybody have an idea? Yeah?
I used remove that.
Yeah, there is a more elegant solution. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to guess. You have to know it, and I would like to show it to you. You just can say skip 1. Cool, isn't it? You don't need to do that. You didn't need to do that in the exam, but still, I would like to teach you something. So this is now really nice. And now take a look at the code here. Replace the caret returns. Split it by n. Ignore the first line. Filter those that are empty, and at the end convert it into different columns. So it's really nice to read if you write it in this way. Again, if you have used for each, if you have used for, if you have used a different approach, that's perfectly fine, but I think it's an elegant solution that I wanted to show you. So let's give it a try and run the tests. While these tests are running, let me tell you, once you got used to this unit testing stuff, you get addicted to these green checks. You want to have the green checks. It's a kind of an achievement, you know? You have written some code. Give me my green checks. I've written some codes. I want to see green checks. Get what I mean? It sounds funny, but it somehow is. Yeah? You have solved this difficult problem and you would like to see the unit test succeed. It's really rewarding if you have built a complex algorithm and it now works. Good. I would like to show you something else which is not obvious for those of you who have Visual Studio Enterprise Edition. You can follow along. For those of you who don't, just look at the video beamer. There is a special mode in Visual Studio which is called Live Unit Testing. See that one? Test, Live Unit Testing, start. If you would like, just click on it. Test, Live Unit Testing, start. This Live Unit Testing window is not relevant, you can close it. It will take only a few seconds. My laptop is currently running pretty hot because of the weather and because of my recording. Therefore, it is very slow. I apologize for that. And at some point in time, we should see some green checks here on the left-hand side. Give my laptop a few more seconds. Here they are. You see the green checks? These green checks mean they mark every single line that is covered by a unit test. So if I do something wrong, for instance, let's say remove this not, remove it, I don't do anything. I not even build the application. I don't run the tests, but I immediately get feedback that I just broke a unit test. Then I can click on the red X here. It will show me all the unit tests and their status, and if I want, I can immediately debug them to find out what I broke. Well, for us here, it's pretty obvious what we broke, right? And it's easy to fix. But in a real-world application, imagine you are deep down in your code, and you're coding and coding and coding, and suddenly live testing tells you, hey, Rainer, whatever you have done now, you just broke a test. Get it? It's a kind of continuous safety net for you not breaking existing tests. This is the kind of development that we are all striving for. Having a lot of unit tests and continuously running these unit tests to always get quick feedback whether the tests are okay. I just fixed it, we get green checks again, everything is fine. Because my laptop is slow, I will remove live unit testing here again. If your laptop is fast enough, you can keep it running. It's up to you. Fine so far? Good? Good. Next one, we can now turn, we have a checklist for that, I'm sorry. We created a checklist. Check. We can now convert the columns into a proper final type. Good. We can add another method here, and I suggest the following. I suggest public dictionary of string and decimal parse rates. And what is the input of parse rates? Should be the output of our parse method. Get the idea? You understand what I mean? So somebody has to call parse, and the output of parse is the input of parse rates. We can discuss whether it would make sense to put that in a separate class or not, and there are a lot of design decisions here, but yeah, you had to make these design decisions in your exam. Anybody has an idea how we could do that? Turning an enumerable of string into a dictionary. I will write the code. You don't need to write it like that, but I think it's code that somehow is okay. We can do a return new dictionary of string and decimal, and then we do parsed text.select line, because we have line by line text, new key value pair of string and decimal, and there it gets the string, which is line.first, it's the first column, got it? And line.last, which is the last column. But we have to turn that into a decimal. And I told you in the exam specification how to turn a string into a decimal. Can you remember it? Decimal dot-parse with an culture info invariant culture in order to get the English number format. So this is a little bit of a trick. Again, you didn't do that in your exam, but I would like to show it to you. A dictionary can be initialized by giving it a collection of matching key value pairs. What is the key? A string. This will be the first column. What is the decimal? This is the last column. Just to make it very clear that everybody understands that. If we take a look at our exchange rate, the first column is the string, the second column is the exchange rate. Got it? Now if we want to be cool again, we can remove the curly braces and remove the return statement. That's up to you if you like it. I'm perfectly fine with you writing the curly braces and the return statement. That's a matter of personal choice. It's not something that you have to do. Got it? What's the next thing we should do? What's the next thing we should do? Whenever we have written some code, we write a unit test. Exactly, exactly. That's the kind of mindset where I want you to bring at the end of this year. I want you to feel physical pain if you have written code without a unit test. Okay? When you leave this school, you have to feel pain when you write untested code. Good. So let's write another test here. In that case, it will be a fact. Public void parse exchange rate. Again, we prepare, we execute, we assert. What is the prepare? Very simple. CSV parser. Additionally, we need to call the parse method here and give it a text. This one. What I do now is not good, and I will tell you in a second why. What I do here is typically an anti-pattern. What I do now is how you shouldn't write a unit test. You know why? What does parse exchange rates test? It should test this method, right? This unit of work. This is why it's called a unit test. And what do we call? In the first line of our test, we call this method. Is our test about testing this method? No, it's not. So we shouldn't do that. So in our case, we forget about that. Instead, we are preparing some so-called mock-up test data. We just say var lines equal to, what is a line? An I enumerable of string. Correct? That's very simple. We just create a list of list of string. Oops. And then we can write here some demo data stuff. So we can say new list of my laptop. The first one maybe is US dollar, and we had 1.1. I think this is correct, right? No? Oh, this is a string. I'm sorry. This is correct. Get the idea? What was the exchange rate for GBP, for British pounds? 0.86. So please take a look at the code that I have written now. I have consciously not called the parse method because we don't want to test the parse method here. We focus on the things that we really want to test. So we come up with some test data which is already parsed. Get the idea? You could also call this a mock object, what we do here. Do you understand that? Good. Let's execute p.parse rates with lines. And now help me with some assertions. What should we check? Should I use equal? But well, probably. I will help you with the first one. US dollar should be in result keys. I think it's like that, right? Exactly. The first key should be US dollar. Am I right? The last key should be what? GBP. Oh, sorry. By the way, this M here indicates that the constant is decimal. See that one? If you just write 1.1, C# interprets this as a float. If you add an M at the end, it interprets it as a decimal. Do you get the idea? And if I think about the code that I've just written, I don't think that it makes very much sense to check first if these two are inside the dictionary, if we really use it inside the dictionary just here. So I would tend to deleting these two lines. Got it? Let's give it a try. Run it. And it should be green in a second. If we didn't screw up, yes, it is green, it is fine. Do you understand what we did here? Do you understand this code? Yep. Good. Very nice. Very nice. Last but not least, we need to parse the CSV file for the prices. Description current price. Well, that is not very difficult because we can follow the same steps that we did here with parse rates. So I will quickly type it in. If you want, you can follow along. Public IEnumerable of, how did we call it? Product price, I think, right? Right? Product price. Parse products. And we again get this IEnumerable of IEnumerable blah. And then we do exactly what we did before. We say parse text dot select. That's exactly what we did before. You see that one? Line. Now we are not newing up a key value pair, but we are newing up a product price. And fill it with appropriate values. What is the first thing? Description is parsed text. The first thing should be the first column. How do I get the value of the second column? There is no parameter, there's no function second.
Just inside square brackets.
Something like this? That does not work with IEnumerable. Because IEnumerable does not have an indexer. IEnumerable only can do step by step by step. Idea?
You could convert it to a list.
I could, but I don't want to. Any other idea? It's on the screen. You could say skip one first. Get it? And last but not least, the price. How do I get, well, the last one, I already told you, because I just can copy this one. Again, you don't absolutely need to do that. If you preferred in the exam to do a for each loop and so on, that's perfectly fine. Even in professional programming outside of school, it's perfectly okay to use for each and for and things like that. You don't absolutely need to use LINQ. LINQ has a tendency to create a very short code. You are a very productive developer if you use LINQ. But LINQ is not always the fastest solution. Sometimes solutions with LINQ are pretty slow. So you really have to critically evaluate whether you want to use LINQ, but at the end of the day you want to learn something. So here in class I show you LINQ and I show you how far you can go. Is it clear? So what is the next thing that we do? What is the next thing that we do? Thank you. Writing a unit test. Exactly. Good. So now it's easy because we can copy a little bit of code. This is not, we will change it really very much so it doesn't make sense to combine them. Parse products. Now, what do we have here? Let's pass in two products. Car US dollar 30,000, car US dollar 30,000, and bike. What was the second test? Swiss francs, I think 800, right? Good. Then we call parse products. And then we need to check whether everything is okay. How could we, for instance, do that? We could say, what would I recommend? Result dot first where product description is car. There should be the price, and it should be something like this. This could be a possible assertion. I think it would, yeah, it would make sense. Would be a reasonable assertion. Bike, 800. Get the idea? We could add another expectation, assertion, to make sure that the exchange rates are okay. You can add that on your own if you are interested. I just want to show you the basic principles here. So let's run it. Yes, I know my laptop is slow, but typically it should be faster. Good. In 53 milliseconds we can run all our tests, and that's pretty good. I want to stop now writing the unit tests, because I think you have now understood the basic principles. So next week for your exam in mobile computing, you will not need to write unit tests. But there will be some point in the upcoming weeks where I will ask you in exams to not only write a little bit of code, but also write fitting unit tests. Or maybe I will give you some code and I will ask you to only write unit tests. Or the other way around, I will give you unit tests and ask you to write proper codes for it so they become green. I think you get the idea. But I will insist of dealing with unit tests at some point in the upcoming weeks. Okay? Good. Any questions regarding the test, or did you understand the basic principle? I think you did, right? Good. So let me show you an example for the last step. I already checked it in. A way how you could have implemented it. Again, if you implemented it differently, that's perfectly fine. One way of implementing it could look like that. You could say, if from equals to, return the same value. If both from and to are not euro, then we are converting first from the original currency to euro, and then we convert from euro to the other one. If it is from euro, multiply with the rate. If it is to euro, divide with the rate. Get the idea? So that's essentially it. This one was optional. This one was extra points. So the thing that you had to write was just this one, and this one for the basic solution. Got it? And of course, I could now copy this method into my code, write a unit test again, but I think by now you understand the principle. Questions? Okay? Good. Now that we have covered that one, I would like to tell you a little bit about your homework. And don't worry, the homework makes sense. It makes sense because if you do this homework, your preparation for the exam next week is done. I don't have a classroom link yet because I couldn't check in the homework before we had the exam. Otherwise, I would have given you the exam before the exam, and that wouldn't make sense. So I will show it now on the video beamer, and immediately after this lesson, I will put it online, and I will put it in WebUntis so you can get it from there, okay? So the classroom link will be made available. So let me show you what I would like you to do. I would like you to implement the test of the other class, but in the form of a web API. So this is now the B class, right? No, it's the A class. Sorry, I had a cover lesson today, so everything is mixed up for me. Good. Let's open this one. Now, please don't tell me that the other test was so much easier or not. I don't want to have this discussion. I did my very best to come up with two similar tests that are still a little bit different. So, this is your homework. We are running a transport company. We are offering bus services from Salzburg to Linz, from Linz to Graz, and from Vienna to Linz. We only have buses traveling between Salzburg and Linz, between Linz and Graz, and between Linz and Vienna. If somebody wants to travel from Vienna to Graz, he has to go to Linz, and from Linz to Graz. Get the idea? Okay, that's our very simple shop that we run. You now have a JSON file with a travel plan. It looks like this. You can get it from there. It's a URL, okay? So, in your homework, you have to practice again HTTP client because you have to download the JSON file. Then you have to parse this JSON file. This JSON file contains some bus travels. You see? City from Salzburg to Linz. This is the time of leaving. This is the time of arrival. From Linz to Salzburg, you see that one? Arrival, leave. I think you get the idea, right? It's extremely simplified. Extremely simplified, all our buses. This schedule is valid for every single day of the whole year. We don't have a separate schedule for holidays and weekends. It's always the same, every single day. So the date doesn't matter, only the times. Now, what do you have to write? Of course, you have to use ASP.NET Core and C#. No error handling. Again, absolutely no error handling. Again, a .NET standard library for the business logic. I just recognized something. This is wrong. Please remind that. Do not do the deserializing of JSON content in the .NET standard library. It doesn't work in the .NET standard library. JSON serializer is not available in the class library. I'm sorry about that. So this one can be outside. Next one. Your web API should support queries like that. I would like to go from Vienna to Linz at 10 o'clock. It should now take a look at the JSON file up here. It should look for Vienna to Linz. What is the earliest connection after 10 o'clock? It's this one. See that one? 1:15 p.m. So it should return Vienna 11 and Linz 1:15 p.m. Got it? Simple. This is the basic solution. The basic solution will always be a connection to Linz. So you can only answer the direct connections from Salzburg to Linz, from Linz to Vienna, or from Linz to Graz, and the other way around. And the more complex solution, where you can earn extra points, is if you can calculate from any city to any city. So you have to calculate the travel from Salzburg to Linz, then look up the next connection when you arrive in Linz to Vienna, and that will be your result. Got it? So what are you going to practice in this exercise? Writing a simple web API, using HTTP client because you have to download the JSON file, writing an ASP.NET Core app, and writing a .NET Standard class library. So everything is inside there. You should be able to finish this example within 2 hours or so. And if you did this example for the homework in the next week, I promise you, you are well prepared if you manage to do this example. You don't need to learn anything more for the exam than just doing this homework. Good? Of course, you should be able to do it, not just try it. Okay? If you find major gaps in your knowledge, please revisit the things that we did and maybe take a look at some earlier homeworks. Any questions regarding this homework? Clear? Your parallel class did have to do exactly that example, but not as a web API, but as a command line tool. Okay? And now they have your test as a web API for the homework for next week. Okay? By the way, you don't need to re-implement the business logic. Just a tip. You can if you would like to exercise. But you have the ready-made travel planner reference result here. You can take your own too. You don't need to implement everything. The point that you should practice is writing a web API and dealing with JSON. Good? With that, we are done for today. We still have a few minutes left. I will use these few minutes to prepare the classroom link. Maybe I can give you the classroom link before you leave.